And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Dr. Muzhi, world-class scientist with ample experience in different branches of life sciences. Dr. Muzhi discloses through philosophical discourse his systematic blueprint for living beyond today's human lifespan, illustrating the great potential of state-of-the-art technologies from an insider's perspective. Today we will talk about his book, How to Rejuvenate and Live 300 Years and Beyond. Dr. Muzhi, thank you for joining me and welcome.
Hi, Jeff. Thank you for having me. My honor to be here.
Thank you. Now, I've learned that bodies usually are supposed to last to about 120 years, and it appears that you're claiming that they can last up to 300 years. How is that possible?
For sure. I mean, of course, nature have gave us a natural cap on how long our body can live, right? And based on the current observance, generally people can live probably 100-ish years. Although in some of the ancient scriptures that people can live much longer, although that we don't know that how can they live that long. My book claims that people can live longer is because they are based on two things. One thing is that based on the observation of other our relative animals, for example, other mammals or other creatures that are close to us. For example, some of the whales can live 200-300 years, and there are other animals can live even longer. That's the reason why, as a human being, I think that if other mammals can reach a lifespan of around 300 years, with the help of modern technology, we should be able to achieve something similar. And that's the reason why I would say, the aim is for 300 years. And another thing is that based on our observation of the trends of the science and technology. So in the past 10, 20 years, there are a lot of development going on. So if you're asking some people who was lived 100 years ago, their probably average life expectancy was 40, 50 years. And they cannot imagine that people nowadays can live say 100 years. So it's the same thing that if you're thinking nowadays more and more people can live around 100 years. So it's time to dreaming about these 300 years. And we see that there are so many technology developments that are leading the human life to the next stage.
How long do you think it will be or take until we're able to live to 300 years?
Well, I mean, I think that based on many of the technology development, it seems like we are very likely to be the lucky generation. That from our generation, we may have some lucky ones who will be able to expand their lifespan and reach that 300-year goal. However, that you will know that after, I would say that 200-ish years later, right? So we will need to find it out, I mean, after about 200 years. But so far, I mean, based on what we have in the arsenal of the scientists and the engineers, it seems like it's something achievable.
There's one definition I heard of aging, and I think this is the perfect definition, and that is your body's ability to repair itself just gets slower and slower until ultimately it can't keep up anymore.
Yeah.
So do you know of any of the technologies that are already in place to reverse that?
I see. So based on what you're saying, yeah, it's true that our metabolism will change over time, right? When we're getting older, some of the expression or activity of the enzymes in our body become less efficient, and they cannot catch up with what you mentioned, the damages and other lesions to our body. So it's that's the reason why over time people are getting aged and are getting more and more prone to disease. So there are many ways to reverse that. I mean, it's not that all of those things have been applied to human already, but it seems like many of them have been observed either in animals or that scientists already know that there is an approach that they can take to reverse that trend. For example, there are some of the little animals, I think, for example, hydras or some octopus, they can rejuvenate by themselves. It's reverse their metabolism and become their just turn back time and become young again, and then they relieve their time and then turn back to become rejuvenated. So, it's like something like that. And scientists have been studying those and know that what mechanisms they have conducted and what genes that are reversing to causing this like rejuvenation like effect. So it's something that like, of course, scientists also have conducted like experiments on like animals trying to like recapitulate the rejuvenation effect, as well as like some scientists are also doing experiments that are trying to expand life expectancy of animals or some on human beings. So taking those together, and if we're optimistic about the experiment results, I think they can apply to human beings. It's likely that we're able to like reverse this process. And also that, as you mentioned, that like, during time that our body ages and there's more damages to our body, we cannot catch up. So the first thing about like to live 300 years is to keep your body young or reverse the aging process. That's the reason why that like for this book, the title is How to Rejuvenate and Then Live 300 Years and Beyond, right? So the big thing is that how to rejuvenate yourself, because even if without rejuvenation, even that like you can like expand your lifespan to 300 years, it's very likely that you'll become very aged or old during that time, and you probably won't be able to support all the functions of your body when you're 300-year-old. If that's the case, probably living 300 years doesn't really worth it. There's a reason why that before that, like preparing for hyper longevity, the first step is to rejuvenate yourself. And that has been discussed in the book about like, the different aspects of aging and how to reverse it and what like technologies will be helpful to help with that.
Are there any practical things that we can do in our life today to help start that process?
Well, sure. Actually, there are many things. So like in this book that like I have listed, like in the first part of the book is like just about how to rejuvenate and live 300 years and beyond. And there are a lot of like definitions and other series. And after explaining that, this is a practical guide about like things to do to achieve our rejuvenation and longer lifespan. So to do that, like there are big things that require medical help as well as like gene therapies or gene engineering. But also there are like more practical, like everyday stuff that like even people without a medical or scientific background they can do. And like for example, small things like every day keep a healthy lifestyle or eating healthy food, and also like to avoid things that can damage your body. I think those are the little things we can practice every day to help us to live longer.
I had a guest on probably a few months ago, and we talked about the herb astragalus. I'm not sure what the Chinese name is, but I think it's pretty popular in Chinese traditional medicine. That herb is supposed to help repair the telomeres in your DNA. Do you know anything about that?
Oh yeah, telomere maintenance is very important if you want to have a longer like lifespan, because they are like as an eukaryotic like life form, we have this linear DNA, and the telomere is the end part of the two ends of our DNA. So each time our cells replicate, our DNA shortens. So the telomere will become shorter and shorter. So like the shorter part is the telomere instead of your critical genes. However, the telomere is not indefinitely long. So when it's getting too short, the cell become panic and its metabolism like change. And also like their gene expression will change. So like there's hypotheses that like, that this is the reason why, like people get, after people getting older, they have like more diseases because their metabolism have changed at a cellular level. So like to do that, like one way is to, elongate your telomere, but one way is through like using telomerase to elongate it directly. Also that, like you mentioned, maybe some of the medicines can trigger the like expression of telomerase to elongate the telomere. So like based on what I know is that like telomere maintenance or the activity of telomerase is like highly regulated in our body. So it's hard to, like find a single solution to, like to elongate it over time. So as though that like you mentioned that like some of the herb medicine, they may help that like elongate your telomere to help you live longer. But it's hard to predict in the long term that whether it will be like remains effective, especially from the perspective of 300 years.
Since you're a biochemist, you may know the answer to this. I've heard that a copper deficiency results in graying of the hair. Is there any truth to that, or is there any other way that you can reverse graying of your hair nutritionally?
That's a very interesting topic. So, it's I'm not like an expert on about like the grain of hair, but based on what I learned, that the pigments was not generated like once you are getting older. That's the reason why that like the color is faded out over time. That's the reason why you have gray and then white hairs. So like to regenerate that, like you need to stimulate the cells so they are producing the pigments as well, and also like keeping those cells alive, right? So those are the things. Of course, there are like one direct or like brutal ways that using gene therapies to force those cells to either like to become active again or generate more like the pigments of the color of your choice. So those can be done, but it's not a reverse of the process, right? It's like a reprogramming of your cells. However, like you mentioned, maybe there are some of the like medicines or other like agents they are able to do something similar. However, it seems like there is no universal like solution yet comparing to like gene therapy, because like what you get.
Where are you at on stem cell research? And I've seen an interview with, I believe it was Joe Rogan and Mel Gibson, where Mel Gibson would fly somewhere, Central America and South America, and get some kind of stem cell injections, I think for his shoulder, which he got great results from it.
Yeah, that's a very hot topic as well. So there's two sides of the of things about like stem cell therapy. One side is that like it's about from the like research perspective, is like the core concept of stem cell research is very promising, right? It's like a cell that can make whatever cells you want. So that you can, if you're thinking about it, you just need to replace it with your like new stem cells, and you get like healed and become young again. However, the truth is like, stem cells is very complicated, and like if you can get some of the stem cells from the baby, that's good. Otherwise, that from the adult cells to recreate the stem cells and program them so that you can generate the cells you want. Actually, it's more complicated than like expected. So although there are some breakthroughs in certain area, overall it's still like kind of needs more like research and development until it's like totally mature. I would say that, because although that some diseases or some treatment is available, but it's not a like ultimate like solution for everything. So from the other side, that because like some of the therapies are more easier and like more mature, actually can find like commercial products there. So actually, like you mentioned, like Central America, and I know that like in like countries in Asia, they also provide like stem cell therapies. Like actually, my grandpa had one of those. Like he feels younger. However, it's hard to know whether it's really there's an effect or something else. So, but you see that like it's like I said, it's a both sides, right? It's one side there are still a lot of development needed, but on the other side, you can see that like there are so many people already benefit from it.
Do you think that we could take a baby and extract some stem cells from it and then put it into some type of like stem cell bank, and then later as the baby ages and needs those cells, it can tap into that bank?
For sure, I think that's a very, very good idea, and I think right now is pretty common practice, because they're like to store cells actually is much easier than like store a human body, right? If you keep the cells at a cryo temperature, they can live for indefinitely. But however, if you like frozen a human being, it's likely that like our body like structure will be damaged. So yeah, like so I think that, and also stem cells, you can keep it for so long, although our current technology cannot make full use of them. but maybe after 10, 20 years, you can do more things with that. So I think it's worth it.
Can you harvest stem cells from the placenta?
That I think so. Yeah, but I need to I'm not an expert on that. I need to take more look at it.
Did you write in your book about cultures in ancient times with people living up to 300 years?
Yeah, we talked about in the book, since that the first part is to explore the idea of rejuvenation and hyper longevity. So I discussed about the in ancient scriptures that people are talking about some of the other human beings or superhuman beings that they can live hundreds of years, right? But however, the things that we are not living at the same time, we cannot ask them directly, hey, how can you live that long? Right? So that's unfortunately that we cannot copy their strategy. Or not, however, nowadays what we can learn from this, our animal friends or other life forms who can live longer, right? We can ask them the question, hey, how can you live that long? And the answer is in their DNA. So scientists, by just reading the DNA of those life forms, we get to know what's the differences that lead them to live way younger and longer, and we can apply them to ourselves using modern technology. So that's one of the core concepts of my book.
I watched a TikTok video recently, and someone was claiming on that video that they can encode our DNA with computer code. Is that true?
Well, I mean, actually, it's very practical. I would say that how do you define programming, right? Things like DNA itself, it's if you think about it, it's like a computer language, right? It's like coding with 4 letters, right? A, T, G, C, and using that with different combination, you have different functions. So if you say that using computer to generate a DNA fragment that containing a sequence of your interest, and then you put it inside yourself and it makes the cell to express or have the function you want. This kind of programming, right? And it's through DNA design or through computerized design. So it is that you are using a computer to program your DNA. But you think about that, it's the DNA having worked this way for billions of years. So it's not that really that we are programming our DNA using our computer. It's the DNA have been programming itself for billions of years.
Besides overpopulation, are there any other risks of everybody living to 300 years?
Oh, wow. There will be a lot of problems. So, I mean, actually, the reason why that my book, the How to Rejuvenate and Live 300 Years and Beyond, is different from other books talking about longevity. Is that on one thing is that it's talking about a super long life. It's 300 years. And the second part is that it's not only talking about how to get there, right? Because to live is not you have a lifespan of certain length. Is to live is that you have to live through it day by day. So in the second part of the book, I discussed about different things that you may face or meet in a 300-year lifespan. For example, you mentioned that overpopulation, right? And also that how to deal with your family and friends. And because if you are living 300 years, and it's likely that you will still reproduce at least 100 years, right? So you will have a bigger family than you have right now. And also that your children will have grandchildren, and also grandchildren will have grandchildren. So if you live 300 years, and based on my calculation, we have 12 generations in the family. So that would be a problem for some of our friends, right? It's because you have to remember the names of probably 120 people, and they are all your sons and grandsons, and then you need to remember their birthdays and have parties every other day. So yeah, it's a lot of things that would be different. Also, another thing that's interesting is about finance, right? So inflation, if you think about it's 3% every year, as we know it's not true based on last year. So if we have a 3% inflation, then over 300 years, you need to save a lot of money to support yourself. So can you imagine that how much money you need to save right now to have the buying power of $1 after 300 years.
I don't know if you watched that show Star Trek, but I remember there was an episode where they came upon a planet that people lived for hundreds of years, if not thousands of years, and they were so overpopulated that you could almost barely walk. They had achieved that because they had cured every disease. And they were actually begging them to give them a new disease that they've never, were able to cure, just to kind of thin out the population.
Yeah.
And what you're speaking of, I would think that we have to be able to colonize other planets just to, accommodate that amount of people.
So actually, I mean, in the second part of the book, we also talked about like overpopulation. So there's two possible ends of it. Like one end is called like social collapse, right? It's like although that we think that without disease or everybody can live longer, we will have more people. But actually, maybe it's not true. So in the 60s, there's some scientists did like very famous like sociology like experiment. It's called like the mouse universe. So what they do is that like they have a bunch of mice and gave them like indefinite like food and drink and like living space. So that they created as a huge like what they call a mouse universe. Then can like live about like 8,000 mouse, and then they throw in like I think it's 20 or 30 to start with. So we will think that you will end up with the mouse universe that overpopulated with mice, right? However, the truth is actually although in the beginning the mouse population like grow exponentially for like a couple of years, and then they plateau only with like about 2,000, and then like the whole mouse society just collapse, and they don't like reproduce, and they don't eat and become angry, and then actually I think it's by year 5. Most of the mice just died, and there are only like 20 or 12 left. So, that could be one end, right? Although it's like we think that like we will have overpopulated. And actually, it's something that happens in Asian countries. If you look at like Japan or Korea or now China, like the people are not, the new generation, their birth rates drop like so significantly because like probably they are already reached a plateau. Although the land can support more people, but you see that like the population started to decrease. Another potential end of like overpopulation is like called evolution. It's a very like trendy word in China. This means that like since that like there are only just so many jobs out there, and you have so many people. So it's like everything is overqualified. It's like that you have a doctoral degree, so you can have some basic work, things like that. So it's like it's very unfortunately sometimes you think about it because like you are all the like education and all the like all the times used to learn those skills are wasted because like although like because you have to be qualified for some basic work with like PhD or MD, it's not worth it. So I mean, speaking of like overpopulation, I think those are the potential trends, and I hope that if everybody can live 300 years, we don't have to live like that.
What inspired you to write this book?
That's a very interesting. Yeah. So I started I think everybody when they were young, they would have a dream about, how long can I live? And, can I live longer? Because you were young, you were energetic, you were thinking about, the future. So I have the idea of this book when I was like studying in one of the top medical schools for my PhD. So at the time, met a guy who became my working partner, who have developed this new like gene delivery system. So it's a very convenient, and we think that we can use it to like reprogramming our DNA. So we were thinking about how can we use it, and like many people who form startups in like medical schools were thinking about like curing disease. But at the time, we were thinking that we want to dream big. So what's the biggest disease that like will kill everyone in the end? So that is aging, right? So we want to using this new gene delivery system to cure aging. So and then like to answer that question, the first thing is that like as a scientist at times, like is aging curable? Like, what is aging, right? We need to know more about it. So we started our own research, and luckily I have been studying the molecular mechanism of life for a long time and know many of the key opinion leaders in the field and have talked with them and learn about their opinion, also, like reviewing the latest papers and see the progress of science, and to know, like, different aspects of it, and also like how to achieve it with gene delivery and other things. So that's the origination of the book.
Now, you look very youthful. Is it possible that you are 60 or 70 years old and you're not telling us what you're up to?
No, I'm not gonna lie. I'm like 30, 40. I'm not like 60. But if I'm 60 and like still look like this, I think my book is more persuasive.
From what I understand, the first steps is to live a clean lifestyle.
Sure,
And, which is probably no drugs, no alcohol, maybe even no caffeine. I'm not sure. And I guess you would also add exercise. But is there anything else that we can take, either herbal or over the counter, that will help rejuvenate us?
Actually, in the first part of the book about like, how to achieve a longer life, we had talked about like different like nutritional supplements or herbal medicine and things like that. The thing is that like it's hard to tell at the point, because there are two aspects. One thing is that, like, as you can see, it's either like herbal medicine or modern medicine. It's like many of them, it's not for everyone, right? So you need like personalized approach, because everyone's body is different, and as you need to find the balance for yourself, right? So that's the reason why I didn't give a direct recommendation for some of those. Another thing is that, like, it's right now, it's hard to find like a single like herb medicine or modern medicine. They'll say, hey, this will be the drug that you take it and it can live 200 years. Because actually the answer to that is very simple. Is that your body is complicated, right? And people tend to use a simple answer or a single answer to answer a complicated problem. That's everybody's dream. However, that's not the case. If you look at like, how doctors treat patients, there's no drug for everyone. And also like the dosage also like needs to be adjusted. That's the reason why, it's hard to predict that, there's only one drug that can make you live longer. Maybe a combination of those. But however, so far there is no solid research saying, hey, taking blah, 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 and you can live longer. That's the reason why that we have I have a list in the book, and we talk about many of them. However, I don't really have a direct recommendation, because everybody is different, and you need to know more based on your own experience.
Are you experimenting anything personally?
I see. So I think gene delivery, like gene therapy, is like what I'm interested in, and we have this technology. That's the reason why I try some gene delivery or gene therapy. But it's not like the traditional gene therapy, because the traditional or the current gene therapy is that they deliver a gene to your body and it's replacing your own genes, right? And it's for it's usually for curing disease. However, there are risks associated with it, because based on current technology, their delivery system could put something external to your body, which I don't personally favor. And also that their gene modification technology may randomly replace a part of your or of your genome that you don't want to replace. So those are the risks. But the gene delivery I'm talking about is that our system is it's delivering a gene into your body. However, it's not replacing your own gene. It's delivering to your body, and it's only do its function, replace, and it's been degraded. So there's no long-term worry for now. So I was doing those kind of gene delivery instead of the more standard gene therapy, and think that's it's like taking a medicine, right? But it's like gene medicine.
I recently saw an article where they were almost ready to grow babies in incubators. Have you seen that? Do you know what I'm speaking about?
Yeah. Actually, I think it was like, I think half a year ago, there is like news that like they were growing, I think it's land babies, right? Or it's I cannot remember whether it's sheep or it's a lamb, or sheep or it's a goat. There's a growing a land babies from a bag. So, you know, so it's if it's like mature, then like I think our female friends can be relieved because like they don't need to have the burden of like giving birth to babies anymore. But it's like that's why I'm saying that like technology have been like advanced so much. Like there are so many like things that's you know I would say that like 50 years ago, you told people that like, hey, you can do like grow babies from incubators. So they won't believe it. But nowadays it become true again. So yeah, it's very interesting to see all the development of technologies.
Do you think they're able to clone a human being yet?
Well, I mean, the traditional cloning actually, I mean, I think it's 1997, right? So after that, I think it's just like there are like ethical groups that are like banning the cloning of human beings. Otherwise, I think it's very close. It's like, it's not like we cannot do it. It's really that scientists are not allowed to do it. But who knows? Maybe there are some crazy scientists already done it already. So I remember it's like last year there was like experiments conducted by Chinese scientists. They're merging like human and monkey and another animal, and grow it to embryo, and then like kill it at 16 weeks, so that like it's not like it's still ethical. But it's like it's already demonstrated, hey, they can do it, right? It's not cloning human beings anymore. It's like is cloning an alien or a mutant. So it's really that like the policies are preventing the scientists are doing it, but it's not like they cannot do it.
Maybe those mythological creatures of like half man, half bull, there's some reality to them, that there was cloning going on in ancient times.
Could be, yeah. Since we know so little about like what are capable they were capable to do, right? So
Yeah.
maybe they already achieved all these, and they already know, and they choose not to do it anymore. Who knows?
What are your thoughts on Elon Musk's company Neuralink? And from what I understand, they basically want to hook the internet straight into your brain.
Yeah. So actually, I mean, we have talked about this in the book as well, and there's a paragraphs like discussion about it. And personally, I'm not very, although I think it's definitely useful, but I'm not like very confident that like it will like become as good as we expect it to be, because the one thing is that like our neurons are so sophisticated. Like our brains, I think, have like 150 trillion like neuron connectors, which is like 70, 80 times of the number of galaxies in the observed universe. So that's how complicated our brain is, right? And there's no way that like you can detect the signals of all of them at once. Of course, you can have a rough signaling of like a electrical like bump or a peak or something that you can detect. However, how do you like dissect that to get to know like each single one of them? It doesn't seem likely, right? So because that will be a bottleneck of our technology, because those will be microscopic enough so that we cannot check it. So then since you won't have the best signal, then it will be hard to make all the analyses or follow-ups response to it to be less effective. That's based on that. I'm not optimistic that like, hey, we can know everything about our brain, or we can really like copy our brain to live in a computer or something. But definitely, on the other hand, I was thinking that like by picking some like simple signals, or have a rough idea of what we are thinking, they can help us, right? Like do some things, and maybe like make a phone calls, or like book some tickets. I think that's achievable. But if I have a total control, like or have a replica of our brains, I think it's hard to achieve. Although I would say that I hope they can achieve it, so that like we can all like live a happy life being have a happy virtual life, right? But it's just like I admire the complexity of life.
I know this is not your specialty, but I just kind of want to take this in this direction anyways. What is your definition of consciousness?
Wow, that's a big question, and I think that it will become like philosophical very quick. So I mean, I like from the scientist perspective, right? It's just a combination of electrical signals, right? That's it. But like, just how fascinating this signal is, right? I mean, give us like feel that we know like who we are, and we can can feel the world. We can have like responses. It's just so nice. And I don't know whether there's something that like at a higher level about it, right? Because it just like because we are as scientists, we only have certain tools that we can explain about the physical world, and that's the only thing we can explain actually. That way, we only know that what we see, what we can like detect with the modern tools, and we say, hey, those are the things we know, and we know they are there. But whether there are things that we cannot detect and still there, we don't know. Yeah, it could be.
I had a guest who was a Harvard neurosurgeon, and he was telling me about another neurosurgeon's research. He was explaining to me that you can cut out any part of the brain and you will not lose long-term memory. You will only lose the ability to change short-term memory into long-term memory. So what he's suggesting is that our memories are not even stored in the brain long-term. They're stored somewhere in the quantum field or quantum hologram.
Oh, that's cool. And I have seen some of the researches that like for some of the like patients who have like severe brain damage, like parts of the brain was like knocked out by like car accidents of them or something. They still like are functional or then remember things. So it's hard to explain that like if you have it's not like computers, right? You know where your memory stick is and you pack it out and it's all gone. But to our brain, it's more like complicated. Like I mentioned, it's just a combination of signals that makes this happen. But of course, we're trying to cover it with what science already know, right? But there's something that we don't know, haven't detected yet. We cannot explain that. That's just it.
If people want to find your book, is it best to get it on Amazon or somewhere else?
Yeah, you can find the book on Amazon, and actually, I think in most of the online platforms that sell books, you can find my book there.
Do you have a website?
Yep, it's called like 300euros.com.
If people want to reach out to you and ask you questions, are you up for it?
Oh yeah, for sure.
And it's best to contact you through your website?
Yeah, cool.
All right. Well, before we finish up, can you leave us with one last positive message?
Sure. Just be positive and live longer.
Dr. Muzhi, thank you for that message, and thank you for being my guest.
Thank you for having me. Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.